Hello, everyone. So when I came up with this topic a couple of months ago, I had no idea how prescient it would be for Netflix's Q1 earnings statement. So I'm here, I'm Maria Ingold. I've been working in this industry for about 30 years now. I've been a CTO for about 20, including for a Disney-Sony joint venture. And now I am Global VP of Solution Engineering for Cinemedia. So at Cinemedia, we work across this value chain. So we have a very holistic service that delivers to streaming services. We have a range of different products. This ranges from content processing and distribution to business insights and analytics, to targeted advertising, video platform, and both security and anti-piracy. So I'm going to be here today talking about two different topics, targeting pirates and targeting audiences. So these are interesting topics right now because companies are looking into them like Netflix because it allows them to both figure out how to pivot and add these as additional services so they can save money for the company and invest in additional revenue. So the first part I'm talking about is targeting pirates. So as far as sharing, in the US, for instance, 29% of all direct-to-consumer services are shared outside of the home. And when you start getting into Netflix, for instance, then that's even higher. That's at 33%. And out of that 33%, 15% have that service fully paid for by somebody else. 3% is sharing those costs. So that tallies fairly much with what we're seeing in direct-to-consumer in general in the US, so that's at 12%. And the other thing that's interesting to note is that out of 18 to 34-year-olds, a third of them have their at least one service fully paid for by someone else. And let me just go back a slide here for a second. And that's a good question about that people have been asking is, but isn't that part of brand building? And I'm just going to come back to this to show you why that can be an issue. So Netflix, for instance, has been growing their revenues, certainly, but their year-on-year revenue growth isn't increasing, it's declining, as is their subscriptions. So their subscriptions are also declining. They declined for the last quarter, and they're projected to decline for future quarters. Now, they have a range of reasons for why this is happening. They've raised their prices. Russia is invading. The economy, COVID, competition. But one of the things that they have singled out is that there's also sharing happening. So they have 222 million paying households. But on top of that, there's another 100 million that isn't paying. And the interesting thing about that is that these are pre-qualified households. They clearly have all of the technology that they need to watch this service. They clearly have the interest in consuming it, but what they're seeing is these people are not paying. And that's a problem. So password sharing is a problem. The usage costs various companies. Not paying means less is invested in creating new content. And of course, all these wonderful content creators are also not benefiting from this. So they don't have the revenue from these companies to create new content as well. So we're starting to see that companies are now acting on this. What's interesting is how they are acting, because they're acting differently to try to solve this as a problem. So Netflix has been looking at this, for instance, for the last 2 years. And in March, they started a trial in Latin America with 3 different countries on how they're going to solve this. So what they've said is, here's a couple of options. We can add an extra member. So that's not counted as a subscriber, but it's a lower price sub-account. Or, hey, if you want to keep your history and my list, why don't we transfer your profile to a new account? Now, why is Netflix interested in this? Well, it could earn Netflix up to 4% of its annual revenue, so up to 1.6 billion possibly annually. And that's a fair bit of money that you could reinvest into doing something else. By contrast, we're seeing other services, for instance, like DSTV in South Africa, saying, hey, we're not going to limit the number of people who are using a login, but we are going to say you can use it on 4 devices, and here's the crux. We're going to limit you to 1 concurrent stream. So you can stream, but it's to 1 device at a time. And what they're interested in is counteracting password sharing as well as piracy. And this is the approach that they've taken. So if you can use a carrot, why do you need a stick? You need to understand a bit more deeply about what's happening here. So what they said is they're fighting password sharing and piracy. So this is a spectrum. There is both sharing and fraud. And we've talked a bit about the sharing already, but the fraud is piracy. It's somebody else making money off of your service. The tricky thing here is it can be a little bit difficult to tell which is which. So when we look at credential sharing and credential fraud, or password sharing and password fraud, the account owner could be knowingly sharing with family and friends, or the account owner could be the victim of fraud. So somebody could have stolen their credentials and it's an account takeover, or the account owner could be the person who is committing the fraud, who is making money off of your service. So, if you look at that, and it's difficult to tell, you might be tempted to say, hey, let's use a stick on this, right? So if you do that, then, okay, you might be stopping some of that usage costs. You might be stopping some of the pirates, but you're not necessarily making additional revenue off of this, and you're not necessarily protecting your brand reputation here either. So the way that this works is if you use something like behavior analysis, and this is over time, right? It's not just sort of a one-off. You look at the behavior over time. And the intention here is to distinguish one household from another, because an account is different from a household. So one account could be used by more than one household. And when you're using behavior analysis, you're looking at the location that's being used in, you're looking at the different devices that they're being used on, the service is being used on. You're looking at viewing patterns, so is someone watching this in the morning? Are they watching this in the evening or on the weekends, or a combination of all of that? That can give you an indication of if somebody has kids or is working from home, or is, what kind of personality profile that you're building up there. And also, which ISP are they connecting in from? So the behavioral analysis approach is much more effective than a threshold-based approach, because when you look at thresholds, what you're doing is potentially affecting people who are, hey, this person is traveling a lot, let's stop them from watching this content. But they might be like everyone here doing a lot of business travel, and you don't want to do that. So with behavior analysis, that allows you to think about what the right actions are for you to take. So behavior to action. So what you want to do is look at what is the size of this problem that I'm facing. What are the priorities for the use cases that I'm thinking through? What's the action I'm going to take here? And how do I measure the efficacy of that action over time? What you have to be careful about is don't, gather inaccurate information, because then you would be troubling innocent subscribers, which is not going to do your brand reputation any good. And you want to think about, how do I manage this at scale rather than taking manual actions? So you've got your behavioral analysis, your acting, and that helps you determine your return on investment. So with that, what you want to do is convert sharers into paying subscribers. You want to increase your revenue. You want to reduce the sharing so that you can decrease your infrastructure costs. You want to block access to fraud. You want to improve your reputation and your privacy compliance. And you want to make sure that you're avoiding troubling honest users. So moving on to our other targeting of targeting audiences. So Netflix recently went from never to, never say never, to, hey, ad supported in addition to SVOD over the next 1 to 2 years. What a pivot, right? But it makes sense. HBO Max, Discovery, the newly minted sort of combination that they've come up with, they're launching ad-free and ad-supported. Disney Plus, it's part of their strategy to go from 130 million subscribers to 230 to 260 million by the financial year 2024. Of course, they're not the only ones who are doing this. Other companies have been doing this for a while, and now we're starting to see that even people who are strictly in AVOD are doing more around advertising video on demand. Why is everybody so interested in this? Well, out of 2021 global online video revenue, 60% was related to the advertising video on demand. Online advertising video on demand. And the next piece that we're seeing here is that the usage of these in different countries. So I've got an example here of 4 different countries. How are people using subscription and advertising video on demand services? Well, they only have a tolerance for so many at a time, right? So if you're in the sort of the top 1 or 2 subscription video on demand services, then maybe you're in there. But if you extend that and create a hybrid service, so you've got something that's a hybrid advertising and subscription price spread, that price spread allows you more flexibility within the customer's budget in terms of the amount of time they have to watch your content and the amount that they're willing to pay for it. So in terms of the online video advertising revenue, this is not an inflection point, right? This is something that has been happening this whole time. So we've got, from the early days, online video advertising has been exceeding subscription video on demand revenues. And this year it intends to pass linear TV advertising revenues. And by 2024, it will pass pay TV subscription revenues. So why is this so special? What's so special about online video advertising? Well, it offers you granular, targeted campaigns and the ability to efficiently target those ads. We do this through a number of attributes, right? So there could be a range of different attributes that you're using, and you can combine those into segments and then target your addressable campaigns for those segments. So somebody who is more interested in your content, in it now, going on a trip now or in, 6 months from now, you've got them engaged, right? And the other piece is the younger audiences are interested in consuming more content online. So if you want to reach them, you need to go to where they're consuming that content. So how does this work? So when you're doing data analytics and insights, you're using machine learning to help you identify patterns, consumption habits, viewing behaviors. That's helping you create these attributes. You can then complement that with third-party attributes. So whether it's panels, and in the UK we use Barb, for instance, or real-time attributes, whether it's weather or the stocks. You then take those attributes, combine them together to create segments. That gives you targeted segments that you can use your addressable campaign to target. And that you can build across multiple platforms, whether it's OTT or broadcast, and services, whether it's live or video on demand. You can add to that by thinking through how do I avoid ad fatigue. I gotta say, since coming to the US, I have seen this truck advert way too many times. What is it with trucks? All the time. Anyway, so you can avoid that ad fatigue by, efficiently controlling your ad spend and your exposure by using things like frequency capping and pacing. And then that fits together as part of a larger addressable advertising solution. So you've got your addressable campaign, you're delivering that to targeted segments across a range of client devices. And if you'd like to find out more about all of this, then come talk with us at Cinemedia. So we have a range of anti-piracy and security products, including our Credential Sharing and Fraud Insights product, which is called CSFI. And we have a range of other products, including business insights and analytics, which ties into our targeted advertising product, Iris. And we've recently, well, in fact, just today, launched Cinemedia Go, which is our platform product that allows for modular components to piece this together, as well as partnerships to do all of this. So please come visit us over here in the West Hall, or go to cinemedia.com, or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. And I just want to say thank you. I am so excited to be back here at the NAB Show 2022.